He is as cheerful and bright as any of these other old men that charge around so persistently and tiresomely in the newspapers, and in every way is remarkable. Last November he walked 5 blocks in a rainstorm, without any shelter but an umbrella, and cast his vote for Grant, remarking that he had voted for 47 presidents, which was a lie. His second crop of rich brown hair arrived from New York yesterday, and he has a new set of teeth coming, from Philadelphia. He is to be married next week to a girl 102 years old, who still takes in washing. They have been engaged 80 years, but their parents didn't give their permission until 3 days ago. John Wagner is 2 years older than the Rhode Island veteran, and yet has never tasted a drop of liquor in his life, unless you count whiskey. The price of life and death. This reminds me, 9 years ago when we were living in Tedworth Square, London, a report was cabled to the American journals that I was dying. I was not the one. It was another Clemens, a cousin of mine. The London representatives of the American papers began to come in crowds, with American cables in their hands, to ask about my condition. There was nothing the matter with me, and each in his turn was astonished, and disappointed, to find me reading and smoking in my study. One of these men was a gentle and sympathetic Irishman, who hid his disappointment the best he could and tried to look glad, and told me that his paper, the Evening Sun, had cabled him that it was reported in New York that I was dead. What should he cable in reply? I said, say the report is exaggerated. He never smiled, but went solemnly away and sent the cable in those exact words. The next man was also an Irishman. He had his New York cablegram in his hand, from the New York World, and he was so evidently trying not to let me see what was in it that my curiosity was aroused and I wanted to see what the cable did really say. So when I had a chance I slipped it out of his hand. It said, "If Mark Twain dying send 500 words. If dead send 1,000. Higgins, yes, I remember that anecdote," the Sunday school superintendent said, with the old pathos in his voice, and the old sad look in his eyes. It was about a simple creature named Higgins, that usually hauled rock for old Maltby. When Judge Bagley fell down the courthouse stairs and broke his neck, it was a great question how to break the news to poor Mrs. Bagley. But finally the body was put into Higgins' wagon, and he was instructed to take it to Mrs. Bagley, but to be very careful in his language, and not break the news to her at once, but do it gradually and gently. When Higgins got there he shouted till Mrs. Bagley came to the door. Then he said, "Does the widow Bagley live here?" "The widow Bagley? No, sir." "I'll bet she does. But have it your own way." "Well, does Judge Bagley live here?" "Yes, Judge Bagley lives here, I'll bet he doesn't. But never mind, it is not for me to contradict. Is the judge in? No, not at present. I just expected as much. Because, take hold of something, Mum, for I'm going to tell you some news which, I suppose, may give you a shock. There's been an accident, Mum. I've got the old judge's body here in the wagon, and when you see him you'll acknowledge yourself that an inquest is the only thing that could be a comfort to him. Chapter 1. Oh, George, I do love you. Bless your dear heart, Mary, I know that. Why is your father so stubborn? George, he means well, but art is nothing to him, he only understands groceries. He thinks you would starve me. Oh. Why am I not a money-making grocer, instead of a gifted sculptor with nothing to eat? Do not lose hope, Georgie, dear, all his prejudices will fade away as soon as you get 50,000 demons. Child, I have no money to pay for my board. Chapter 2. My dear sir, it is useless to talk. I haven't anything against you, but I can't let my daughter marry a hash of love, art, and starvation. I believe you have nothing else to offer. Sir, I am poor. But is fame nothing? The Honorable Bellamy Foodie of Arkansas says that my new statue of America is a clever piece of sculpture, and he is satisfied that my name will one day be famous. Bosh! What does that Arkansas ass know about it? Fame's nothing, the market price of your marble statue is the thing to look at. It took you 6 months to chisel it, and you can't sell it for $100. No, sir. Show me $50,000 and you can have my daughter, otherwise she marries young Simper. You have just 6 months to get the money. Good morning, sir. Alas! Woe is me. Chapter 3. Oh, John, friend of my boyhood, I am the unhappiest of men. You're a simpleton. I have nothing left to love but my poor statue of America, and see, even she has no sympathy for me in her cold marble face so beautiful and so heartless. You're a dummy. Oh, John. Didn't you say you had 6 months to get the money? Don't laugh at my agony, John. If I had 6 centuries, what good would it do? How could it help a poor fellow without name, capital, or friends? Idiot. Coward. Baby. 6 months to get the money, and 5 will do. Are you insane? 6 months, a lot of time. Leave it to me. I'll get it. What do you mean, John? How on earth can you get such an enormous sum from me? Will you let that be my business? Will you leave the thing in my hands? Will you swear to submit to whatever I do? Will you promise me to find no fault with my actions? I am dizzy, confused, but I swear. John took up a hammer and slowly smashed the nose of America. He made another pass and two of her fingers fell to the floor, another, and part of an ear came away, another, and a row of toes was cut to pieces, another, and the left leg, from the knee down, lay a ruin. John put on his hat and went away. George gazed speechless upon the nightmare before him for 30 seconds, and then fell to the floor and went into convulsions. John returned presently with a carriage, got the broken-hearted artist and the broken-legged statue aboard, and drove off, whistling peacefully. He left the artist at his lodgings, and drove off and disappeared down the Via Querulus with the statue. Chapter 4. The 6 months will be up at 2 o'clock today. Oh, agony! My life is ruined. I wish I were dead. I had no supper yesterday. I have had no breakfast today. I dare not enter a kneading house. And hungry, don't mention it. My bootmaker and my tailor demand the payment of my debts, my landlord haunts me. I am miserable. I haven't seen John since that awful day. Mary smiles on me tenderly when we meet in the streets, but her father makes her look in the other direction. Now who is knocking at that door? Who has come to persecute me? That villain the bootmaker, I'm sure. Come in. Ah, happiness attend your highness. I have brought my lord's new boots. Ah, say nothing about the pay, there is no hurry, none in the world. Shall be proud if my noble lord will continue to honor me with his custom. Ah, adieu. Brought the boots himself. Doesn't want his pay. Takes his leave with a bow. Desires a continuance of my custom. Is the world coming to an end? Of all the, come in. Pardon, Signor, but I have brought your new suit of clothes for, come in. 1,000 pardons for this intrusion, your worship. But I have prepared beautiful rooms below for you. Come in. I have called to say that your credit at bank is completely restored, and we shall be most happy if you will ask for any. Come in. My noble boy, she is yours. She'll be here in a moment. Take her. Marry her, love her, be happy. God bless you both. Hip, hip, her come in. Oh, George, my own darling, we are saved. Oh, Mary, my own darling, we are saved, but I'll swear I don't know why nor how. Chapter 5. One of a group of American gentlemen reads and translates from the weekly edition of IELTS Langhanger di Roma the following, wonderful discovery. Some 6 months ago, Senor John Smith, an American gentleman, purchased a small piece of ground in the Campagna. Then Mr. Smith had that piece of ground transferred to a poor American artist named George Arnold. He said that later he would make some improvements on the ground for Senor Ray, at his own cost. 4 weeks ago, while making some necessary excavations, Senor Smith unearthed the most remarkable ancient statue. It was an exquisite figure of a woman, and though stained by the soil, no eye can look unmoved upon its beauty. The nose, the left leg from the knee down, an ear, and also the toes of the right foot and 2 fingers of one of the hands were gone, but otherwise the noble figure was in a remarkable state of preservation. The government at once took possession of the statue, and appointed a commission of art critics, antiquaries, and cardinal princes of the church to fix its value and decide what sum of money must go to the owner of the ground in which it was found. The whole affair was kept a secret until last night. Last night they decided that the statue is a Venus, and the work of some unknown but gifted artist of the 3rd century before Christ. They consider it the most perfect work of art the world has any knowledge of. At midnight they held a final conference and decided that the Venus was worth the enormous sum of 10 million francs. In accordance with Roman law, the government being half owner in all works of art found in the Campagna, the state has to pay 5 million francs to Mr. Arnold and take possession of the beautiful statue. This morning the Venus will be removed to the capital, and at noon the commission will visit Senor Arnold with His Holiness the Pope's order upon the treasury for the royal sum of 5 million francs in gold. Chorus of voices. Luck. It's no name for it. Another voice. Gentlemen, I propose that we immediately form an American company for the purchase of lands and excavations of statues here, to bull and bear the stock. All agreed. Chapter 6. Dearest Mary, this is the most celebrated statue in the world. This is the famous Capitoline Venus you've heard so much about. Here she is restored by the most noted Roman artists. The worshipped, the celebrated Capitoline Venus, and what a sum she is valued at. 10 millions of francs. Yes, now she is. And oh, Georgie, how beautiful she is. Ah, yes, but nothing to what she was before John Smith broke her leg and smashed her nose. Oh! Gifted Smith, noble Smith, author of all our happiness. Hark! Do you know what that wheeze means? Mary, the boy has got a cough. Will you never learn to take care of the children? The Capitoline Venus is still in the capital at Rome, and is still the most charming and most celebrated work of ancient art the world can boast of. But if ever it shall be your fortune to stand before it and go into ecstasy over it, Don't permit this true and secret history of its origin to spoil happiness and keep your own counsel. The progress made in the great art of shipbuilding since Noah's time is quite noticeable. Also, the looseness of the navigation laws in the time of Noah is in quite striking contrast with the strictness of the navigation laws of our time. It would not be possible for Noah to do in our day what he was allowed to do in his own. Experience has taught us the necessity of being more conservative, more careful of human life. Noah would not be allowed to sail from Bremen in our day. The inspectors would come and examine the ark, and make all sorts of objections. A person who knows Germany can imagine the scene and the conversation without difficulty. The inspector would be in a beautiful military uniform, he would be respectful, friendly, the perfect gentleman, but steady as the North Star to the last requirement of his duty. He would make Noah tell him where he was born, and how old he was, and what religious sect he belonged to, and the amount of his income, and his social position and the name and style of his occupation, and how many wives and children he had, and how many servants and the name, sex, and age of the whole of them, and if he hadn't a passport it would be necessary to get one immediately. Then he would take up the matter of the ark. What is her length? 600 feet. Depth? 65. Beam? 50 or 60. Built of dash wood. Passengers? 8. Sex? Half male, the others female. Ages? From 100 years up to where? 600. Ah. Going to Chicago, good idea, too. Surgeon's name? We have no surgeon. Must have a surgeon. Also an undertaker, especially the undertaker. These people must not be left without necessities of life at their age. Crew? The same 8. The same 8? The same 8. And half of them women? Yes, sir. Have they ever served as seamen? No, sir. Have the men? No, sir. Have any of you ever been to sea? No, sir. Where were you brought up? On a farm, all of us. This vessel needs a crew of 800 men. You must have them. She must have 4 mates and 9 cooks. Who is captain? I am, sir. You must get a captain. Also a chambermaid. Also sick nurses for old people. Who built this vessel? I did, sir. Is it your first attempt? Yes, sir. I suspected it. Cargo? Animals. Kind? All kinds. Wild or tame? Mainly wild. Foreign or domestic? Mainly foreign. Principal wild ones? Megatherium, elephant, rhinoceros, lion, tiger, wolf, snakes, all the wild things of all climates, 2 of each. Securely caged? No, not caged. They must have iron cages. Who feeds and waters the animals? We do. The old people? Yes, sir. It is dangerous for both. The animals must be cared for by competent keepers. How many animals are there? Big ones, 7,000, big and little together, 98,000. You must have 1,200 keepers. How is the vessel lighted? By 2 windows. 2 windows for a tunnel 600 feet long and 65 feet deep. You must put in the 1,500 incandescent. What do you do in case of leaks? How many pumps have you? None, sir. You must have pumps. How do you get water for the passengers and the animals? We let down the buckets from the windows. It is not enough. What is your motive power? What is my which? Motive power. What power do you use in driving the ship? None. You must have sails or steam. What is the nature of your steering apparatus? We haven't any. Haven't you a rudder? No, sir. How do you steer the vessel? We don't. You must have a rudder. How many anchors have you? None. You must have 6. One is not allowed to sail a vessel like this without that protection. How many lifeboats have you? None, sir. You will have 25. How long are you expecting your voyage to last? 11 or 12 months. 11 or 12 months. Pretty slow, I think. What is your ship sheathed with? Copper? Not sheathed at all. Dear man, the wood-boring creatures of the sea would make holes in her and send her to the bottom in 3 months. She cannot be allowed to go away in this condition, she must be sheathed. Just a word more, do you know that Chicago is an inland city, and not reachable with a vessel like this? Chicago? What is Chicago? I am not going to Chicago. Indeed? Then may I ask what the animals are for? Just to breed others from. Others? Is it possible that you haven't enough? For the present needs of civilization, yes, but the rest are going to be drowned in a flood, and these are to renew the supply. A flood? Yes, sir. Are you sure of that? Perfectly sure. It is going to rain 40 days and 40 nights. Do not worry about it, dear sir, it often happens here. Not this kind of rain. This is going to cover the mountain tops, and the earth will pass from sight. Privately, but of course not officially, I am sorry you know this, for now I must not allow you to use sails. I must make you use steam. Your ship cannot carry the 100th part of an 11 months water supply for the animals. You will have to have condensed water. But I tell you I am going to get water from outside with buckets. It will not be enough. Before the flood reaches the mountain tops, the fresh waters will have joined the salt seas, and it will all be salt. You must condense your water. I will now bid you goodbye, sir. Did I understand you to say that this was your very first attempt at shipbuilding? My very first, sir, I give you the honest truth. I built this ark without having any experience or instruction in ship architecture. It is a remarkable work, sir, a most remarkable work. This compliment does me infinite honor, dear sir, and I shall keep it in my memory while life shall last. Sir, I thank you. Adieu. No, the German inspector would be limitlessly polite to Noah, and would make him feel that he was among friends, but he wouldn't let him go to sea with that Arkansas. If you get into conversation with a stranger in Honolulu, and want to find out what kind of man your stranger is, strike out boldly and address him as Captain. Watch him carefully, and if you see by his face that you are on the wrong track, ask him where he preaches. It is a safe bet that he is either a missionary or captain of a whaler. I became personally acquainted with 72 captains and 96 missionaries. The captains and ministers form 1/2 of the population, the 3/4 is composed of common Kanakas and mercantile foreigners and their families, and the final 1/4 is made up of high officers of the Hawaiian government. A solemn stranger met me in the suburbs one day, and said, "Good morning, Your Reverence. Preach in the stone church over there, no doubt?" "No, I don't. I'm not a preacher." "Really, I beg your pardon, Captain. I trust you had a good season." "How much oil?" "Why, what do you take me for? I'm not a whaler." "Oh. I beg 1,000 pardons, Your Excellency." "Major General in the household troops, no doubt?" "Minister of the Interior, likely?" "Secretary of War?" "First Gentleman of the Bedchamber?" "Commissioner of the Royal Stuff?" "Man, I'm no official. I'm not connected in any way with the government." "Bless my life. Then who are you? What are you? And how did you get here? And where did you come from?" "I'm only a private personage, a modest stranger, lately arrived from America." "No. Not a missionary. Not a whaler. Not a member of His Majesty's government. Not even Secretary of the Navy." "Ah! Heaven! It is too good to be true, alas! I do but dream." And yet that noble, honest face, those frank eyes, that massive head, your hand, give me your hand, bright man. Excuse these tears. For 16 years I have yearned for a moment like this, and, here his feelings were too much for him, and he fainted. I pitied this poor creature from the bottom of my heart. I was deeply moved. I shed a few tears on him, and kissed him for his mother. I then took the money he had, and went away. The following I found in a Sandwich Island paper, which some friend has sent me from that quiet place. The coincidence between my own experience and that of the late Mr. Benton is so remarkable that I cannot help publishing and commenting upon the paragraph. The Sandwich Island paper says, "How touching is this tribute of the late Honorable D.H. Benton to his mother's influence. My mother asked me never to use tobacco. I have never touched it from that time to the present day. She asked me not to gamble, and I have never gambled. I cannot tell who is losing in games that are being played. When I was 7 years of age she asked me not to drink. And then I made a resolution to give up drinking, and that I have kept it through all time I owe to my mother. I never saw anything so curious. It is almost an exact repetition of my own moral career. How well I remember my grandmother's asking me not to use tobacco, good old soul. She said, "You're at it again, are you, you boy? Now, don't ever let me catch you chewing tobacco before breakfast again, or I'll whip you fiercely." I have never touched it at that hour of the morning from that time to the present day. She asked me not to gamble. She whispered and said, "Put up those wicked cards this minute, 2 pair and a jack, you fool, and the other fellow's got a flush." I never have gambled from that day to this, never once, without a cold deck in my pocket. I cannot even tell who is going to lose in games that are being played unless I dealt myself. When I was 2 years of age she asked me not to drink, and then I made a resolution to give up drinking. That I have kept it and enjoyed the effects of it through all time, I owe to my grandmother. Let these tears prove my gratitude. I have never drunk a drop from that day to this of any kind of water. How the author was sold in Newark it is seldom pleasant to tell on oneself, but sometimes it is a sort of relief to a man to make a confession. I wish to unburden my mind now, but I almost believe that I do it more because I feel a strong desire to blame another man than because I want to pour balm upon my wounded heart. I don't know what balm is, but I believe it is the correct expression to use in this connection. You may remember that I lectured in Newark not long ago for the young gentlemen of the society. During the afternoon of that day I was talking with one of the young gentlemen and he said he had an uncle who, from some cause or other, seemed not to feel any emotion. And with tears in his eyes, this young man said, "Oh, if I could only see him laugh once more. Oh, if I could only see him weep." I was touched. I said, "Bring him to my lecture. I'll start him for you." "Oh, if you could but do it. If you could but do it, all our family would bless you forever, for he is so very dear to us." I was deeply moved. I said, "My son, bring the old man here. I have got some jokes in that lecture that will make him laugh if there is any laugh in him, and if they won't, I have got some others that will make him cry or kill him, one or the other." Then the young man blessed me, and wept on my neck, and went after his uncle. He placed him in full view, in the second row of benches, that night, and I began on him. I tried him with mild jokes, then with severe ones. I dosed him with bad jokes and riddled him with good ones. I fired old jokes into him, and peppered him with red-hot new ones. I attacked him on the right and left, in front and behind. At last I was hoarse and sick and furious, but I never moved him once. I never started a smile or tear. I finished the lecture at last with one wild burst of humor, and fired a joke full at him. Then I sat down quite exhausted. The president of the society came up and bathed my head with cold water, and said, "What made you carry on so at the end?" I said, "I was trying to make that old fool laugh, in the second row." And he said, "Well, you were wasting your time, because he is deaf and dumb, and as blind as a badger." In Nevada they told me the story of an adventure of two of her nabobs, which may or may not have occurred. I give it for what it is worth. Call. Jim had seen somewhat of the world, and knew more or less of its ways, but call. Jack was from the back districts of the states, had led a life of hard toil, and had never seen a city. These two, whom God sent sudden wealth, planned a visit to New York. Call. Jack to see the sights, and call. Jim to keep him from misfortune. They reached San Francisco in the night and sailed in the morning. When they arrived in New York, call. Jack said, "I've heard of carriages all my life, and now I mean to have a ride in one. I don't care what it costs. Come along." They stepped out on the sidewalk, and call. Jim called a fashionable carriage. But call. Jack said, "No, sir. None of your cheap carriages for me. I'm here to have a good time, and money ain't any object. I mean to have the nobliest carriage that's going. Stop that yeller one with the pictures on it, don't you worry, I'll stand all the expenses myself." So call. Jim stopped an empty omnibus and they got in. Said call. "Jack, aren't it gay, though? Cushions, and windows and pictures till you can't rest. What would the boys say if they could see us traveling like this in New York? By George, I wish they could see us."